right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Nothing like the graveyard slot after lunch. So can I just ask you to stand up and shake your legs? Because we're going to be talking about mobile. And we're going to change gears, going from like, just come on, shake, come on, we need your brains working. Oh, come now. Look at the lethargy in the room. Okay, now, I know Andres is like a dragon with the clock, but I'm going to try and do a bit of buzzword bingo. So we've got 28 minutes. And I can see the visibility is pretty good in the room. You guys are a good target audience who've been highly profiled, but really timing is a bit unguaranteed. So I'm supposed to have 7 minutes, but I'm going to put a few minutes on the exchange. I wanted to put it open, but probably he wouldn't have been happy with that. So I've opened it up to the private exchange with my colleagues, and David won an extra 3 minutes on the bid. Regarding double verifying this with the time, I'm going to keep time on my mobile phone. There might be a 10% discrepancy. If it's more than that, I'm sure there's a lot of you in the room who can audit, and we can talk about it at the coffee break. Okay, so what we're going to have, sorry, where's the clicker? Is for the record, there's a few slides that I've got here, 3 slides specifically, that have come out from App Annie and IDC. It is open in the public domain, and they've been studying what's been going on between mobile web ads, mobile apps, and PC web ads. No surprise, the growth is in-app advertising between 2013 to 2014. What's really interesting, though, is where is this money being spent? And if you want to really think about where we're going with mobile, have a look at India, United Kingdom, United States, because it seems these are the key markets that seem to be making the bucks on in-app advertising versus app downloads. And if we don't get moving, I'm sorry, but Google and Apple are going to get all of our money. And then finally, with regards to growth, it really is mobile in-app advertising that is forecasted by 2018 to be where the development is going to be. So I don't know about you, but I was here 10 years ago at ICOM, and we were like, oh no, it's all about web. Well, guess what? I think it's really now about in-app. And I think the core focus should really be about how to make sure that we're all still mediated into that value chain. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a few minutes with David, 10 minutes talking about a consumer study from Yahoo. They've acquired Flurry, so he's even got some great analytics from Flurry, in-app analytics. And then the lovely 2 gentlemen, Shubu and Vass, will also be going through some great results regarding marketing effectiveness and the role of mobile in that value chain. So over to you, David.
Thank you. Is this on? Yeah, perfect. Thank you. I just want to make sure that I get this clicker right. I'm just nervous about that. Really excited to be here. First off, it's San Sebastian. It's amazing. But also really excited to be here to present to you all the latest piece of research from Yahoo. And particularly excited because, as Laura mentioned, this is our first venture in terms of our research department in working with Flurry Analytics. So for those folks who are not familiar with Flurry, Flurry is a massive data warehouse. Essentially, they represent 600,000 applications, 250 million phones. A third of every single app opening for a month, it comes from Flurry. So Flurry has their SDK on all of those applications. And so essentially a huge database, and for a data geek like me, and I'm sure a lot of people in the room, you can very easily get out of control with that data. So we really leveraged that data plus a survey of 6,000 smartphone owners across a couple of different markets to come up with a sort of a global perspective and understanding of where mobile migration is really headed. And that's really what this whole study is about. And so where we feel like it's headed is really towards this world that we're calling smartphone dominance. And so smartphone dominance consumers are really those users who are going to spending most of their time on their smartphones, and they're really using them to replace their PC. So we're referring to them as mobile first, mobile led, and mobile immersed. So mobile first, meaning 67% of them say that their smartphone is actually replacing their PC. 3/4 of their digital time spent is on their smartphone device. And they do 50% more activities on their smartphone than the average smartphone owner. So really heavy users. And so when we sized this audience and we sort of projected out globally, we saw that that number reaches about 18%. So you would think sort of a small number, but really the power of that 18% is where it's headed in a very short period of time. Essentially within 57% within 5 years, 67% in total. So that number is going to grow exponentially. So we really feel like we're at a moment in time that's perfect to start talking about this, because it is a major sea shift, and I think Laura mentioned it really great. It was a little bit about the PC before. Now it's really about the smartphone device and sort of what the power of the smartphone can bring to you all as marketers and advertisers. And so for us, we really wanted to understand and dig in a little bit deeper in terms of what are the factors that are really expediting this shift towards this smartphone dominant world. And so we really identified 3 different factors. One is developing for larger screens, creating experiences for cross-screen, not mobile only, and then adapting to trends in the app revolution. So we'll dig into each one of those very briefly. So first off, developing for larger screens. Again, getting into this Flurry data was fantastic. You can really see as screen sizes grow, engagement grows with it, which sort of makes intuitive sense. And obviously what's happened as a result of that is there's been this, all of a sudden this sort of the industry is run with more phablet choices. So the inception of the iPhone 6, the iPhone 6 Plus, all of these new choices that we all have, the screen sizes are just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And so that really allows for marketers, advertisers, and content providers like ourselves a larger canvas to paint with. And so now, really for us, the way that we're looking at it is the paintbrush to use is really native advertising. And so we've done some research apart from this biometrically, where we were able to prove through biometrics that native advertising truly does work. It works tremendously well, and I think you guys are going to be talking a little bit about that later. And so the other reason why native is really important to keep in mind as you're planning, specifically with mobile, is because it follows where your user wants to be. Native usually works with responsive design, and so with responsive design, your message can follow the consumer across devices. And so we've talked about ourselves at Yahoo as a mobile-first company quite a bit. The key delineation there is that we're mobile-first, we're not mobile-only. Because that would be ignoring a very significant portion of our user base, and also what people really want in terms of consumers. Even the most current smartphone dominant folks, the heaviest of smartphone dominant users, are really wishing that tasks can very easily transfer across devices in a much easier fashion. And what we mean by that is essentially, as I'm taking the train, the very long train ride back home from work, I'll usually start watching, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Community, but it's a show that we just picked up at Yahoo. So I'll be watching the show on my way back home, and then my expectation is that the second I get back home, I can put my laptop open and start watching exactly where I left off. And that's really what we're talking about here. It's porting those experiences across devices in a very seamless fashion. And so finally, it's really about adapting to the app revolution as well. And so what do we mean by that? Essentially, we've seen through Flurry data for over the past 2 or 3 years, a consistent basis of around 8 apps every single month are being downloaded. And so that number's not going up or down, it's really staying pretty consistent. And the reason for that is because we feel is because of the second point here. When we ask people what motivates them to really download apps, the first piece was really about needing it for a specific task. So think about things like Uber, Starbucks, things that you just sort of get on your mobile device so that you can really have some transactional things. But the second piece is really interesting. It's replacing an existing app. And so this opens up a whole sort of new set of questions for us, and we're going to be digging into that very topic a little bit deeper with Flurry coming up very soon. But what it also opens up is in terms of opportunity for how you advertise on mobile. It's not only about sort of advertising for you for folks to really download your app. It's really about now, if your app is already existing on the phone, you can advertise to them and let them know that here's a new feature. It's more about iteration and messaging that iteration to your consumers in a very easy way. And if your app is already on the phone, it'll be an open button versus a download button. And so that could, in essence, start stopping this replacement cycle, which for smartphone dominant users is actually over 50% replace applications at least once a week. So they're really, really in the marketplace for applications. And so how could you easily do this? What's the best way of communicating that? It's really about word of mouth, content marketing, and advertising. And so 2 out of those 3, content marketing and advertising, are really best done through native advertising. So content marketing is really best experience and a native experience, and obviously with ads, we feel the same way. And I mean, even beyond that, I knew that was going to happen eventually. even beyond that, you see in the Super Bowl this year, a lot of gaming apps actually advertising and spending the whatever $4 million it took to have a 30-second spot on the big game. So it's becoming bigger and bigger to really sort of advertise your applications in the marketplace. And so in terms of the home, like where people are really going for applications, phablets are not only having a big impact in terms of advertising, but in terms of the screen size, it just allows you to offer more lean-back experiences. You're more likely to engage with things like sports and news and magazines and music, media, and entertainment. So essentially, it's opening up a whole new opportunity for you to spend more time on your phone. Engagement will grow, most likely, as phablets become more and more integrated into our lives. And so it's a really huge opportunity to sort of live in all these different experiences, and it opens up sort of this thought of video as well, and mobile video. And we've done some research, and we've seen a lot of research in the marketplace recently talking about how mobile video is really growing. And so finally, I wanted to leave you with a couple of quick implications. One is more space. The advent of the phablet device is really offering you a new opportunity. There's a larger canvas. We feel like the right paintbrush is really native advertising. Integrated mobile budgets. So there's somewhat siloed budgets sometimes we've heard in terms of having your mobile budget here and your PC budget here, or TV budgets and things like that. It's really more of a digital ecosystem. So really planning across those different screens, taking advantage of responsive design, making it easier for you to integrate into this mobile device becomes really, really important. The third is really constant iteration and innovation. It's really about messaging what's best, not what's new. It's not always about sort of pushing out the latest app. It's really about pushing out what you've iterated. One of Adam Cahan, who's our head of mobile, really has this fantastic example of Bank of America and how they've really iterated their app. Right, it started with GPS and locations and ATMs. Then it went over to tapping into your camera, right? So now you can take a picture of your check and download or deposit your check virtually. And now it's really about geofencing and sort of offering cashback offers. So it's really about iterating and then messaging through, in the last point, really getting the word out and advertising through things like word of mouth, content marketing, and advertising. So thanks a lot.
Dave's got the clicker.
Okay. Yeah. Actually, I think I'm going to stand here because I think the correlation of standing there and the clicking going wrong is higher than standing here, so I'm just going to try this. Although, I stand corrected. All right. So, hi everyone. Vassilis Bakopoulos. I'm in charge of research for the Mobile Marketing Association. I'm here with Shubu Mitra from the Coca-Cola company, and what we're going to do in the next 14 minutes is that we have some data and insights that come from 5 studies that we've conducted. One of them with the Coca-Cola company, the other 4 are with AT&T, MasterCard, and 2 studies with Walmart. And hopefully, we're going to see the evidence of the real value of mobile in the mix. So that's kind of our goal for the next few minutes. I think Alfonso from Twitter before showed a kind of a much better slide in terms of trying to kind of use one slide to kind of describe this huge transformation that kind of we all experience. I think it's probably the biggest transformation that we're going to see in our lifetimes, right? It's just fueled by the smartphone penetration and the fact that it's just going through the roof. But it's also it's wide and deep, right? It's that intimacy of our relationship and connection with our devices that makes mobile so unique. And I think we've all been talking about, all the different things that we can do as brands, as in terms of using the proximity, pervasiveness, and personalization that, in theory, mobile allows us to kind of to connect with consumers. But if this is kind of the promise for mobile, the question is, what is the real value of mobile in the mix, right? And as an industry, we've been trying to answer that for a while. I joined the MMA at the Mobile Marketing Association about 2.5 years ago. I come from an agency background, and I was just listening to these questions from my clients back in the day. So as I joined the MMA, at that point, they were kind of getting ready for a big research initiative to answer these questions. And the first question was, and still is, what is the role of mobile in the mix when you think about the entire purchase funnel, right? You have the, different goals, your campaigns, maybe trying to push awareness or image or, sales. So how does mobile work in this spectrum, right? And is it more or less efficient compared to the other media? The second question is, what is the optimal allocation of mobile in the mix, right? I mean, if you think about your entire all your advertising dollars or euros or whatever you have, how much should you allocate to mobile, right? And the third question, assuming that you've answered 1 and 2, is like, how do you make this mobile investment work harder, right? What are some ways that you can actually use best practices or some things that you can do to optimize within your mobile investment, right? What are the things that you can do there? So these are the 3 questions that we've been trying to address, and we started this big research initiative about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. We call it SMARCS, for Smart Mobile Cross-Media Effectiveness Studies. And I'm just going to very, very quickly tell you what we've done in the last 2 years. The first one is that we had to mobilize an entire ecosystem, right? We have to raise $2 million, work with 20 companies. And I'm going to show you the logos on the next page. Everyone from publishers and big kind of networks. And then we also partnered with 3 trade groups. The Advertising Research Foundation has been involved from the beginning, steering us in kind of the right direction. And then, the American Association of the Association of National Advertisers and the 4As in the U.S. So it's been really a kind of a cross-industry kind of initiative, along as well with like 7 major marketers, one obviously standing behind me, that have been also involved in actually, working with us to test their campaigns. So all these kind of resources and kind of energy went into kind of work collaboratively to create something that we felt was addressing the need. And it was a way to really measure, do a real in-market testing and kind of measure the entire mix, but do that in a way that also measures mobile. And a lot of times, the challenge with mobile is that it's a small percent of the mix, so it's hard to actually kind of even measure it or even kind of be more granular and understand, unpack all the insights in terms of what's happening with mobile video, mobile display, native, and all those permutations, right? The third piece is that everything that we're going to show you today is basically coming from the US, but we have a global perspective, or actually we will have a global perspective hopefully next year. We just finished a study in China that we can't release yet because we're just doing the analysis, but then we also have studies lined up in the UK and Brazil. So by the end of the year, we will have a lot more. This is the thank you to this really amazing companies and partners that have, really kind of teamed up with us. And this is the kind of how it works. That the interest of time, I'm going to keep it very, very brief. Do come to me afterwards to actually, just talk more if you want. And like I said, I mean, the goal here is to kind of do a real in-market testing. So we grab a campaign, we work, for instance, with the Coca-Cola company, we identify a campaign, we design the whole study around that, and we use a panel to collect exposure data across all different media. For mobile specifically, we have a 500,000 kind of sub-panel part of that actually we use to passively track mobile. And I think the interesting thing here that we do is that, and it's why it took us such a long time, is that we had to do a number of technical integrations between that panel and a number of publishers and other networks. And what this basically allows us to do is to target device IDs of the panelists and be very, very efficient in the way that we actually use our limited, usually, number of mobile impressions. So then basically, we can collect exposure data at the individual level for all different media, and then we kind of use, brand we use surveys to measure brand KPIs, or we, measure. Sometimes we do sales linkage analysis or foot traffic, and then of course we, we run regression analysis to connect those two things, the inputs and the outcomes, and just go from there and actually quantifying the actual value of each one of the media. So with that introduction, now I'm going to hand it over to Shubu to start unpacking the insights for the Coca-Cola campaign that we did with the Coca-Cola company. As you'll see, this is in the context of four other marketers, three other marketers and four other studies actually. So across all these 5 studies, as you can see, we have, as you will see, we will have data for all the different steps of the purchase funnel. So Shubu.
Thank you, Vaz. And before I dive into the slides, just a word of thanks to MMA. It played a very important role in taking up this industry initiative that pushes the boundary of knowledge. That's something I think we need to think about. I don't think any of us are comfortable with the number of open, unanswered questions in the area of marketing and measurement. It's growing exponentially. Resources available to any of us to answer those questions? Very likely not growing exponentially. If it is growing exponentially, let me know. I would love to work for you. And so how do we cover the gap? This initiative that MMA put together that brings together the players to answer these kinds of questions is critical. Okay, with that, I'm going to share some findings. It's going to be pretty quick. Just so that you have comparability across different marketers that you're going to see, we're going to index the results, right? We're going to tell you what was the impact of mobile relative to the whole campaign, okay? With that said, we're talking not about brand Coca-Cola, but Gold Peak. It is one of the still beverages we market in the US, targeted towards 25 to 49-year-olds. And last year, starting late spring up until early fall, we ran a campaign that went on TV, print, mobile, including other digital, and out of home. And the question was, what kind of impact did it have at these different stages of the marketing funnel? So yes, the end goal is obviously to drive sales, but let's have a better understanding of how it gets us there. So the first thing is if you look at top-of-mind awareness, has a huge impact relative to the rest of the campaign. Remember, this campaign had TV. It had out-of-home, it had print, and mobile delivered almost 5x times general campaign results. On a specific image statement that was of interest to the brand, it delivered almost twice as much impact. And all this while mobile was about 5% of the budget, and it delivered a little above that in terms of impact on sales. So if you step back and try to answer the question, did mobile deliver? I would say yes, in this campaign, in this study, absolutely yes. If you look across some of the other marketers, and I don't know the details, one of the things that MMA did in this study was try to simulate what is the optimal level of investment. And you see that for the different marketers, it's at different levels. For Gold Peak, it was 10% as opposed to the 5% that we had invested. And if each of those marketers had achieved that optimal investment level, there would be significant gains to be made. For Gold Peak, we're looking at a simulation of a 4% jump in sales. For the other marketers, you see the results up there, affecting significant parts of the sales funnel. Now the question is, mobile advertising isn't just one kind of thing. It differs by format. Still images, still plus audio, video, time, place, and the quality of creative. And one of the nice things in this study is, while it measured the overall impact, it gave us some insights. So if you look at, and I'll do the full build here, if you look at the impact of including audio with a still image, yes, putting audio costs more, but you will find the ROI was even higher. Yes, putting video costs more, but the ROI at low frequencies was significantly higher, and even with high frequencies, you're getting a significant jump in ROI. So Vaz, do you want to come up and take on the rest of the slides?
Thank you, Shubu. So a couple of more slides, basically unpacking some of the insights from the other studies. the remaining 2 minutes that we have, 2.5 minutes. This is for native, and I think native is also kind of a big example in terms of, and obviously it means a number of different things. When we call native, what we call native here is, it comes from like news sites and sponsor stories in news sites. So that was one of the biggest questions for Walmart as we were thinking and we were discussing about their leading agenda. And they were basically saying to us, you know, native is so much more expensive, right? It's just 5 times more expensive, but then we just need the evidence and the data to move away from the pencil units, because creatively, I mean, there's only as much as you can do there. So as we, got the results and analyzed that, we found out that in this case, it was kind of a tremendous difference between, what you pay, which is 5 times more, and what you get, which is 10 times more. So again, I mean, as we're thinking about, the future and how these insights are going to kind of, travel around the world, and probably, publishers are going to see that as well. Eventually, probably, markets are going to become more efficient. But at this point, we see this kind of the big difference in terms of that. And again, to Shubu's point before, the same effect here in terms of the frequency. As you think about, like, these are all coming from like frequency curves, right? Where at low frequency you see this event, this kind of big jump, but at high frequency you start hitting diminishing returns. So in this case, you have to think about managing the frequency or thinking creatively about, kind of having creative rotation here, right? One kind of last piece, and there's a lot more actually, reach out to me in terms of like, time of the day targeting and creative and all that. But location, I think, is a big one that usually kind of gets a lot of questions. And Walmart, again, used 2 different approaches for location targeting. One of them was audience targeting, and basically it's the idea of like you've been to a Walmart location before, and then we basically, that's kind of, we define that audience. And that, just drove, I mean, taking the same unit advertising kind of creative, it increased the results by 50%. But proximity targeting, which is, obviously the idea of real-time targeting while you're crossing the zero fence, actually perform a lot harder, 2.5 times better. So again, I mean, some of these insights, will hopefully allow us to kind of start thinking that, it's not this or that, but it's like how you actually use the mobile toolkit more effectively, right, and efficiently. And if you do that, the last piece, and this is the slide actually that Shubu showed before, which is basically what happens if you optimize your budget for mobile, and this is the 4% sales jump that you would have for Gold Peak. If you actually optimize within that mobile budget, then you would actually get even better results. Actually, you will see a 7% offline sales jump, and a lot stronger results as well for the other brands, right? So just to kind of just summarize what we had, I mean, there were 3 key questions. Question number 1 was, can we use mobile across the purchase funnel, and what are the specific KPIs that we can use, and how efficient can we be around that? We saw some evidence that, I mean, you can actually see from top of mind awareness to image and even sales that mobile actually works and delivers results in a very, very efficient way. The second question was, what is the optimal mobile allocation for my campaign? And at least from these 5 studies that we have, they kind of point to the direction of around 10%, like a very low double-digit kind of allocation. Obviously, that's going to be influenced again by smartphone penetration and best practices in the market. And the third question was, how can I make this mobile investment work harder? And Shubu started kind of dimensionalizing some of them in terms of, using format, location, and then there's more that we can unpack at some other point, time of the day, and creative that also have kind of a big impact in actually, taking more value out of mobile. So that's what we had to say.
Thank you, gentlemen. I have some questions. Otherwise, I'm opening it up to the floor first. Does anyone have any questions they would like to ask on these mobile case studies or about some of the Flurry analytics in the Yahoo study? Very quiet audience who need coffee in 4 minutes. Okay, so a question I have for Shubu is, now that we have some insights regarding effectiveness for mobile in the path to purchase funnel, what do you think it takes to activate these insights in the context of a global organization like yours? I'm based in Dubai, and actually Pepsi is a bigger brand than Coke, perhaps. So we'd love to know what we should be doing right, maybe for you.
I think first is let's not diminish the learning that we got from this study. Not just from participating and looking at the results of what the results were for Gold Peak, but also looking at the results for the other brands. We're looking forward to the results as it comes in from multiple countries. This morning I was up on stage and I was mentioning the fact that we need to build a foundation that pushes our knowledge boundaries. This is another brick in the wall. It tells me that we did one measurement study for one campaign, for one brand in one country, and the results came back positive. That's good, but that doesn't mean that it's going to work every time. Where we should plan our future campaigns, taking into consideration the learnings about not just the potential uplift, but also some things about formats, proximity, timing, those things that matter. So yes, there is learning to be used, but it's not, as you would expect, a simple case of, okay, let's put 10% in every campaign, right?
Well, I'm sure my business would be happy to do some case studies with you. Okay, can I ask David a little bit more about your study that you had done was actually the transference of consumer behavior between the screens. Do you want to spend just maybe a minute or so sharing what you're seeing across, and it was a multi-country study, is that correct?
Yes, yeah. So the study was definitely global, and Flurry data is sort of mapped to the global population. So, yeah, we saw something really interesting in terms of the sort of the sequential flow of how consumers are really using their devices. Traditionally, it's always been sort of PC to smartphone. What we saw is the first sort of or desired transfer is really from a smartphone to a PC. And so really we're seeing more and more when we talk about sort of mobile-led or mobile-first, we're seeing that in very real numbers. People are actually starting their experiences on their smartphone devices and then porting it across multiple devices, be it a PC or a tablet. So it was one of the more eye-opening sort of stats for us in terms of how we were able to understand a little bit how we sort of move forward and the offerings that we offer advertisers like yourselves, essentially really allowing for those same those sort of messages that you guys are putting out there with native and things like that to really be able to port easily across devices, and employing responsive design becomes so important.
Right. Do we have any questions in the room? Okay. I'll carry on then. Can I ask you, Vass, with regards to the word mobile and even mobility, and we've seen some great examples this morning of the Internet of Things, and I think if anyone's read the Cisco report, they said in about 5 years there'll be over 50 billion Internet-enabled devices that will have a connection and be relatively smart enough for us to track. What do you think is your role as a trade body in the measurement of these Internet of Things and even machine-to-machine technologies? Do you see that being picked up by your organization or some of the other lovely ones in the room?
Well, I mean, obviously we think that this is going to be the next big wave. Obviously, it's too early, but we see all of this. Everybody's expecting that it's going to grow exponentially. We saw a lot of interesting data this morning, and from my perspective as the head of research at the MMA, what I can say is that definitely there's a lot of education, understanding that we need to do as the trade group for mobile. We feel that this is going to eventually be a part of the concept of mobility. And I think what someone else said earlier, I think it's interesting to see that at least in the beginning, all of those new devices, the drivables, the wearables, and all that are just going to be feeding back into, a lot of interesting data into our smartphones, basically. So I think it's going to be very, very interesting to see, obviously, how we, navigate this space and how we kind of educate the market. But so just to give you a very quick answer, and I see the time up, definitely the Mobile Marketing Association will actually want to be kind of a big part of leading the evolution and kind of transformation there as well.
Okay, so that concludes our session. Just to sum up, by 2018, IDCs say that there will be more money spent in in-app advertising than desktop PCs. The market is going to explode with devices, and I think on that note, we should all have a coffee and think what we'll be thinking about in 5 years at that ICOM conference. Thank you, everyone.